streak and began instead his nightmarish decline towards death, with the jarring thought that Lou Gehrig may not have had Lou Gehrig's disease. Maybe more correctly, that he may not have only had Lou Gehrig's disease. He may have been suffering from, or also suffering from, either of the concussion-related illnesses, CTE or CTEM, which have devastated so many former National Football League players and led so many of them to take their own lives. At the outset, let me say I don't want to further stoke the argument between those who doubt the Gehrig prognosis and those for whom the fight against Lou Gehrig's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, is enabled, enhanced, in some way improved by its connection to the immortal Yankees first baseman. The debate, and it is deeply personal to those afflicted with any of these diseases, may have no meaning. Even the complicated science that distinguishes the concussion trauma illnesses from ALS allows for the possibility that brain injury could in some way trigger ALS. What is important is that 75 years ago today in Detroit, Lou Gehrig, his motor skills deteriorating, went to manager Joe McCarthy and told him he could no longer play and that his backup, Babe Dahlgren, should replace him. 25 years ago today in Los Angeles, I interviewed Babe Dahlgren, and he told me something that only last night occurred to me is a possible key to the essential question. Was Lou Gehrig in some way the first fatal victim of what we now consider the concussion crisis of modern American sports? Babe Dahlgren was the rookie first baseman of the Boston Red Sox in 1935, and he told me that on a rainy day that season at Yankee Stadium, Gehrig singled, rounded the bag at first, hit a patch of wet infield dirt, and collapsed to the ground. Dahlgren said that the trivial, even comical nature of the scene quickly turned uncomfortable and then frightening. Lou Gehrig could not get back up. The infield wasn't that slippery. Dahlgren told me that he watched Lou Gehrig, an idol even to rival major leaguers like himself, try without success to stand up again. He said he saw Gehrig actually get to his hands and knees and shake and wobble and get no further. Dahlgren said he began to move towards Gehrig to help him and then thought better of it, being a rookie. Instead, he said he watched in something approaching horror as Gehrig, only after great labors, managed to get back on his feet. Dahlgren said he thought to himself, something is very wrong with Lou Gehrig. That was in 1935. Gehrig was diagnosed in 1939. Only last night did I think of a third part to this puzzle. On June 29, 1934, the Yankees played an exhibition game against their farm team in Norfolk, Virginia, and one of their top pitching prospects, Ray White. Ray White had a grudge against Gehrig for a previous perceived slight, and Gehrig homered off White in the first inning, and when he came up for his second at-bat, White hit him in the head with a fastball, 2 inches above the right eye. As Gehrig crumpled to the ground like a rag doll, witness said, the ball bounced high behind the plate and hit the side of the Norfolk Stadium press box. Gehrig was unconscious for 5 minutes and then staggered with help off the field. Though this was before batting helmets, his skull had not been fractured. He was diagnosed with a concussion. He played the next day in Washington. Gehrig had to borrow a larger cap and cut a hole in it because the welt on his head was so large and painful. He hit 3 triples. Then the game was rained out. In the following 7 games, he hit 4 homers en route to a triple crown. And a week after those 3 triples, he singled, got to first base, and suddenly experienced immobilizing back pain. The Yankees announced he was suffering from lumbago. When he came out of another game with the same symptoms a year later, they used the same term, and again in 1938. What are we seeing? Lou Gehrig hit in the head, unconscious for 5 minutes. 2 weeks later, sudden unexplained back pain that would recur intermittently for the rest of his career. Sometime the following season, Babe Dahlgren sees him unable to get back to his feet, unsteady even on his hands and knees. Gehrig, sick in 1934 and 1935 and 1938, yet diagnosed with and dying from a disease that usually immobilizes its victims within months of their first symptoms. It's all anecdotal. I'm not a scientist. But regardless, to me, it elevates the poignance of Lou Gehrig's story to some higher level still, a level that is almost unspeakable. Babe Dahlgren spoke to it. I did a second interview with him for ESPN in the early autumn of 1989 about what had happened 75 years ago when Lou Gehrig went out and Babe Dahlgren had to go in.
He took the lineup up to the umpire Basil at home plate, and he knew he was out. It was announced he wasn't going to play that day. He walked back, walked past us on the bench, and the drinking fountain was just beyond us, and Johnny Murphy was sitting next to me, our relief pitcher. As he did, he took a drink of water and he stayed down there, and I looked and I was as close as I am to the end of the stage, and I said to Johnny, he's crying, and Johnny reached back and took a towel from behind him and threw it, and it landed right on Lou's head. And Lou wiped his face, and finally he came up, and after being down for about 2 minutes, and no, everybody ignored him. They were looking, and yet they weren't looking. They didn't want him to see them looking at him. And he planked himself down on the edge of the bench, and he stayed there for the rest of the game. I went to him in the 7th inning, and I said, Lou, you better get in there now and keep your streak on. We won the game 22-2. I almost had 4 home runs. I hit a home run. One was caught off the fence, and 2 they jumped up in left field there in Detroit. And this 8th inning, I went to him again, and he said, oh, you're doing fine now. In the 9th, I said, look, Lou, you got to keep it going.
And he wouldn't come in. He wouldn't, just to keep the streak alive.
That's it. And there was a feeling of finality, you know, at the time. This was I felt that I did something trying to get him back in the ball game, but he had made up his mind.
At that moment, Lou Gehrig had 2 years and 31 days to live.